Welcome in for another episode of the Silver and Blue Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Sanchez. Joining me is my co-host, Corey Douglas. Corey, this is episode 49. We've recorded 49 of these since I want to say a little bit before draft season, and we have finally arrived. It is playoff time. Coming up Monday night, the Cowboys head to Tampa Bay to take on Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in the wild card round. How are we feeling as we head into I guess it's now Super Wild Card weekend, whatever that means.
Yeah, I will say this: we're not feeling as good as we were maybe 5-6 weeks ago about this team's chances of making a deep playoff run. But nonetheless, it's going to be a Monday night football game, prime time, and it's going to be up to the guys to go out there, play well. Definitely kind of wash that Week 18 performance away, and try to go out there and beat the best of all time.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a fun one, one way or another, just in terms of I guess a viewer experience. Now, maybe as a Cowboys fan, it might not be as fun, but it'll definitely be an interesting ride for sure. Because as we know, Cowboys playoff games are never easy with this team, so definitely should be interesting. And when you have the greatest quarterback of all time on the other sideline and year 22 or 23. I forgot how many years it's been for him. So, yeah, a lot of headlines going into this one. Real quick, since life and travel, all that stuff came up this week. We weren't able to record a post game pod about Washington. Just briefly about that game. I mean, obviously, just a disaster of a game heading into the postseason where they just got destroyed. A lot of concerning stuff. That was one of the worst games of Dak's career. Um, Defense is still just trying to throw some stuff at the wall for that opposite corner position, opposite Trevon Diggs, and see what sticks. It sounds like Xavier Rhodes is going to get some run this week off the street. He's played the same number of snaps for the Cowboys this year as you and I have, and he might be your starting outside corner in your first playoff game. So uh,
Hmm.
they're currently in a little bit of a crisis in terms of the secondary opposite Trevon Diggs. So that was an issue. But yeah, mainly the offense was just a disaster on Sunday. There was, and I think there's some credence to they tried to get away with a really simple and easy game plan. There was no motion. There was hardly any play action. There was quotes from some insiders with Washington where they talked to Washington players and they thought they're like, I don't think that was their full effort. I think they were just getting ready for the wild card round, which, who knows? They didn't give any specific names, but just a really weird week where they played really poorly and just it wrapped up a really interesting season for Dak, where I would say largely he's been really good, but his season has been bookended by two just two of his worst performances of his career. So just a really strange way to end the season that honestly gave a lot of people a sour taste in their mouths heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, regarding, I guess, the whole they didn't, I guess try as hard, or they didn't really put together a game plan for that. I know Mike McCarthy kind of hinted at, they didn't have a great week of practice, coming off maybe the Hamlin situation, maybe some of that was kind of in their minds. But also, I just my personal opinion, I don't see the point of going out there with a limited game plan with starters being
Yeah.
out there. And on top of that, Dak Prescott, like you said, he played probably the worst game of his career. It still shouldn't look quite like that. But again, it's a Week 18 game. Uh, it didn't really matter because, the Eagles and 49ers had won anyway. So even if the Cowboys won, they would still be in the same situation, just with a 13-4 record versus a 12-5 record. So I'm trying not to harp on it too much, but that is not a good feeling to kind of go into this game off of.
Yeah, offensively, again, I thought the defense was largely fine. That was honestly some of the best. I'll pull up the PFF numbers here in a minute when I hand this back to you, but it seemed like the pass rush was a lot more active in that game. It seemed like it was better. It just again, still issues with that second cornerback spot, but offensively, the offensive line got whipped in the run game, and it's honestly an alarming trend that we've seen since Terrence Steele got hurt. Run game just hasn't been the same since he got hurt. Also, they didn't have Tyler Biotish, and the offensive line, I thought they were okay in pass pro, but they just were getting no movement in the run game. And so this alarming trend of how much Dallas is running the ball inefficiently on early downs, it's completely bogging down the offense and making life harder for Dak. And this is now a couple week trend where, and honestly, it's a long trend of the season, but it's gotten worse over the last couple of weeks. Where I'm hoping this was just like dumbing down the game plan before they go into the playoffs, because if they're shoving it up the middle for 1, 2, maybe 3 yards every first and second down and putting Dak in third and long, they're going to be packed up on Monday. So they have to figure out that run game. Either that or they have to borderline abandon it. Like you cannot let the early down runs just ruin the offense and put Dak in awful situations, because frankly, that's kind of been what's happening recently. And the Cowboys' awesome third down numbers are because Dak has been bailing them out in third and long so often. So that's definitely something I'm going to be looking for. And it's definitely something that was alarming to see. But it sounds like Biotish will be back. They'll have their full, and I say full complement in terms of what they have left. It's not what you would have hoped. But it sounds like Tyler Smith will go back to left tackle. Jason Peters will be your swing tackle, and McGovern will go back to guard, and we'll go from there. And it's just a little concerning, given that it doesn't get much easier with it doesn't get much harder than dealing with Vita Vea in the middle of a defense. So a lot of concerning stuff from the offensive line recently, especially in the run game.
Yeah, and that's one of the main concerns that, I think we both kind of agreed on last week when we were talking about concerns heading into a playoff matchup is, what type of game plan is Kellen Moore going to come up with? And the one that's he's come up with the last, 3-4 weeks, where it's primarily running the ball ineffectively on first down, that it could be a huge issue because in this game, although Tampa Bay has struggled offensively for the majority of the year, I kind of feel like they figured some things out the last couple of weeks of the season, especially getting Mike Evans involved. So if you are consistently, going 3 and out and giving Tom Brady, ample opportunities to be on the field and, kind of nickel and dime the defense down the field and, keep your defense out there on the field, that's going to be a problem. And, once you, kind of open things up and go to like the no huddle offense or the hurry up offense, which the Cowboys are known to do when they, trail in some of these games, it's going to be too late. Because once Tampa Bay finds a rhythm, I think it's going to be hard to stop with the guys that you're going to kind of be rolling out there, due to some of the injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I just pulled up the PFF pressure numbers in terms of the defense being better, or the pass rush. Dallas totaled 15 pressures against Washington. Micah Parsons had 5 pressures and 20 pass rush snaps, which is really, really good. A 26% pass rush win rate is going to get the job done. They sacked Sam Howell 4 times. Micah got 1, Osa got 1, Sam Williams got 1, and Dorrance Armstrong got 1. DeMarcus Lawrence also tallied 3 pressures. So again, it's not what we got accustomed to seeing in the first 6-7 weeks of the season, but that was one of the more active days the pass rush has shown in the second half of the season. So it just, as we get into this Bucs matchup, it's just going to come down to, do your star players play like star players in the most important time of the year? And it comes down to 2 guys, and I forget who posted this on. It was some Cowboys account on Twitter, but basically just said, look, if these like you're either these 2 guys are going to play their asses off and they go on a big run and they're Superman for you. Either those guys are Superman for you or you're going home early, and it's Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons. Just with how this roster has developed as we've seen it throughout the year, it's pretty clear they're going to go as far as Dak and Micah can take them. And honestly, Micah's sack numbers have kind of fallen off, but like the pressure numbers have still been there recently. And they've ticked up a bit more. So I'm not too worried about Micah, but they're going to need a big day out of him. I believe he had 2 sacks against Brady in week 1. And against this depleted Tampa Bay offensive line, they're going to need a big day out of Parsons.
Yeah, I think I heard an interesting conversation today, kind of going kind of along that same thing. Was three guys with the most pressure heading into this game, and it was Mike McCarthy, because I do think there is something or a discussion to be had there about if they come out and don't look good and kind of get the doors beat off of them. I think there's a legit case that Mike McCarthy might not be this team's head coach going forward. But then the second was Kellen Moore, his game plan, which we just touched on, and then Dak Prescott. He's going to have to show up in a big game this Monday. I mean, on Monday. There's just no other way to put it.
Yeah.
Coming off the worst game of his career, at this point, you've thrown an interception 7 straight games. Whether it's his fault, receiver's fault, tip passes, whoever it is, enough is enough. It's
Yeah.
a broken record at this point. Him coming into the media press conference after game saying, "Well, I got to be better at taking care of the football." You have to be better on Monday night, or we're going to start having some different conversations, kind of around the quarterback of this football team about, can this team win with him at quarterback? I think that's
Mhm.
going to be questions that come up if he does not perform well on Monday night.
Yeah, real quick on Dak, and then we'll let's get into Tampa Bay specifically. This whole thing is so strange because it's so uncharacteristic of him. Like throughout his career, he has a remarkably low interception percentage. He's always taken care of the ball really, really well. It's just never been an issue for him, and I think just for whatever reason, it's come out of nowhere this year. And I think part of it's just like yes, some of the interceptions have been on him, but I want to say I think 7 of the 15 have been on like non-turnover for PFF stat non-turnover worthy plays, where it wasn't really his fault. Where I be it a receiver quit on a route or the receiver dropped it or something of the sort. There's a variety of reasons, and I think just those throws that aren't his fault combining with ones that have been his fault have just kind of compounded it. And I think it might just be mental at this point for him, and it's something he's going to have to overcome. And frankly, in most of his games since he's come back, yes, there's been the interceptions, but he's played incredibly well in a lot of these games to completely overcome them. Like Exhibit A, the Eagles game, that awful pick six early, and then he goes on the rest of the day to have arguably the best game of his career. So he's been able to overcome them largely, but he was not on Sunday. They're either going to need him to keep having to overcome these mistakes, or you just at a certain point you have to stop throwing the ball to the other team, bar none. So I do agree. And I was thinking about today that, and I'm about as big of a Dak defender as you'll find. I don't think he's on the Mahomes tier, but I think he's a damn good quarterback that you can absolutely win with. And even I'll admit, coming after how he played against San Francisco in the playoffs last year, because I would contend he's played well to very well, depending on each game. In three of his four playoff games against the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Packers his rookie year. San Francisco game was the first playoff game where you were like, that was bad and not up to his standard. I'll be the first to admit there is a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott on Monday, just in terms of, and again, he's not going anywhere. He's going to be this team's quarterback in the future and going forward, but that conversation is going to get louder if he does not show up on Monday. And I trust that he's going to show up on Monday just because of his track record and what we've seen from him in the past and how he rebounds from poor games. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Dak, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing. And like you said, it's not just Dak; it's also on McCarthy too. That's another conversation for another day on whether they'll let go of McCarthy if they lose. But there's certainly some pressure specifically on Dak and Mike McCarthy heading into Monday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are right at the top of the list. And I was reading some quotes yesterday from some of the defensive guys about, does the Tom Brady being 7-0 against the Dallas Cowboys, matter come, Monday night? And in a large part, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, some of the quotes I was seeing, like I believe it was Ron Kerr said, well, he hasn't beat us this year. Being, the
I love that
23
technicality.
calendar
I
year.
love that.
Yeah, so which makes sense. But now, guys, you have to go out there and back it up. I've been seeing a lot of Micah Parsons on Twitter saying, I'm gonna be in the Super Bowl, or I'm in playoff mode, line activated, or whatever his hashtag he used. Okay, well, let's not let
Prove
this
it.
be the
Yeah.
loudest that we see. I'm, as I think most Cowboys fans are at this point, we are tired of the talk. Go out there and go out there and play well and win a road playoff game, which is something you haven't done as a franchise in many moons.
I think it's
Uh,
been since 1993 was their last
yeah,
road playoff win.
so yeah, it's been a long time. So yeah, it's they I know there's a joke about how Tank Lawrence called the Cowboys defense the Hot Boys.
God.
There's a local radio host that called them Hot Noise, because your talking is louder than you're actually on
Oh,
the field in big games. So I mean, I think there's something to that at this point. But like I said, Monday night this can all start to kind of be erased if they can go out there and put together a good performance.
oh man, the Hot Boys era. Never forget, man. What a time that was.
A
Just
mess.
one of the many eras of Cowboys football. Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting on Monday just to see how their big players perform because again, there's a lot of guys with a lot on the line on Monday. And I do think Tampa Bay snuck into the playoffs as an 8-9 team that wouldn't have made it in any other division. So I think Dallas has a lot more to lose here than Tampa Bay. I mean, obviously they're both playing for their
Absolutely.
seasons, but I think there's a lot more pressure on Dallas. Tampa Bay's at home, prime time. Like it's going to be rocking. It's not going to be easy at all. I believe the current spread is Dallas favored by 2.5. So in all likelihood, this game's going to come down to the wire. And honestly, like I want them to make a run, but literally, I'm almost at the point where I'm just like, just get me one. Like I need at least one. Like I can't do another first
Mhm.
round exit. So, frankly, I don't think ownership and the front office and a lot of these players are going to be able to handle another one and done. So a lot on the line on Monday. Let's take a look at Tampa Bay statistically. Let's start with their offense. It's wild how quickly their offense fell apart. Um, from last year to this year. Um, Looking at their numbers here, yeah, they were 25th in points per game at just 18.4. They were second in pass yards at 269 yards per game, but that's only because they were abysmal rushing the ball. They were dead last in rushing, and a lot of that had to do with their offensive line being obliterated by injuries and just having a completely ineffective run game. So, as good as their passing numbers look, that's on it. Their numbers are so good because they have been completely unable to run the ball. It's completely, they've had to completely rely on the passing game to get any sort of activity going. And we've seen in multiple games from the Bucs this year where they can't get anything going late. They're down late, and you just have to throw everything out the window. And Tom Brady starts slinging it, and they pull it out at the end. Be it that game against the Rams midseason, or that game against
The
New
Saints.
Orleans that Monday night where they
Mhm.
have nothing for about 3.5 quarters, and then they have to throw everything out the window, and Brady just starts slinging it, and that's kind of where those passing numbers come from. Part of that's because Brady still can get the ball out quick. He was one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the league, despite having a bad offensive line. He gets the ball out quick. He has really good weapons with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. So this Tampa Bay passing attack is definitely something to be concerned about for Dallas. And I'm interested to see how Dan Quinn game plans for stopping this passing attack and how much credence he puts into putting a personnel out there that might be able to help stop the run. Like, how worried is he going to be about stopping the run after? And the interesting part about that is one more thing, and then I'll hand it off to you is as bad as Tampa Bay's rushing offense was, and again, these are two completely different teams from where they are now to where they were in September. But Tampa Bay gashed Dallas on the ground in week one, um, and
And
ended up
bullied them.
going on to have the worst rushing attack in the league. So I'm interested to see how Dan Campbell goes about game planning for this and how many eggs he puts into the basket of stopping the run versus the pass, because he's got to find a balance there, even though Tampa Bay's rushing attack isn't good.
Yeah, I think when you look back at that week one game, Leonard Fournette, 21 carries, 127, 6 yards per carry. And I just remember it was a lot of bully ball
Mm-hmm.
where he just could not be tackled. They were running to that left side, which as the season went on, was definitely confirmed as like a weakness for this Cowboys run defense. It has been kind of shored up over the last 4 to 5 weeks. However, Rashad White, which is a rookie that they were really high on coming into the season, he has started to kind of emerge, and he's a great pass catcher, so they're going to use him in that facet a lot. So I think it's going to be a little bit of an attack. But as far as the run game goes, you look at Leonard Fournette and Rashad White; they rank 41st and 42nd out of 42 running backs with 100 plus carries with yards after contact. So that just goes to show that this is a team that struggled in the run game, and it's something that the Cowboys are going to still have to contend with come Monday night.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to say about the Cowboys defense coming in here is they are health-wise, this is about as healthy as Dallas is going to be the rest of the way. They have, as far as the injury report today, I meant to mention that earlier, but injury-wise, Dallas is about as healthy as they're going to get. They're getting back Leighton Vander Esch, Tyler Biotish, and Jonathan Hankins this week, which should be a big help, especially up front in the running game. I think Jonathan Hankins is going to help a lot. And honestly, Leighton Vander Esch is a incredibly unsung hero of this defense. We've really seen the linebacker play fall off a cliff a bit since he's gotten hurt. Damone Clark, God love him, but he's going to be a good player, I think, but he still is just a little lost at times, and that's just the inexperience showing. And then Anthony Barr just doesn't have the speed he had. So they really missed Van Der Esch. I think getting him back will help. I think getting back Hankins will help. And they're going to have some interesting decisions in terms of who's on the active roster. Mike McCarthy hinted that some players aren't going to be thrilled. That's how he was bragging about basically how healthy they are at this point, that there's going to be some guys that are disappointed that they're not on the active roster just because they're getting all these options back. So there will be an interesting numbers game in terms of who's active in the secondary, with Xavier Rhodes and then getting Jonathan Hankins back. So that I'm interested to see who makes the active roster, because they're going to have some decisions there.
Yeah, and I think one of the more kind of underrated, because this is another punching bag of Cowboys Twitter and Cowboys fans, is Leighton Vander Esch and how big of an impact that he really has on this defense. Jonathan Hankins, another guy who, since coming over in that midseason trade, has made a great impact. So that will definitely be welcomed reinforcements heading into Monday night. And like you said, they're going to have some tough decisions to make with the actives and inactives, but hopefully, they make the right decisions, and, some of the guys that are upset, hopefully, that inspires them to kind of practice well this week, and knowing that these decisions are going to have to be made on Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And then real quick, I meant to mention the injury report earlier. Tampa Bay has some interesting, and this is kind of indirectly related to our conversation about the Dallas defensive front, but Tampa Bay injury wise, the only guy that was a DNP on Wednesday was Kyle Rudolph. So who knows if he'll play? But there is rumors that Ryan Jensen, who tore his ACL, I believe was it in training camp or OTAs when he tore his
Second training camp.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe he's on that. We were talking before we started recording. Maybe he's on that Adrian Peterson timeline. But there's rumors that Ryan Jensen could be back for them this week, which would be huge for them. And it looked like Robert Hainsey practiced, who's their normal center. And they haven't decided yet if they're going to activate him. They have until next Wednesday. So I guess, we'll see if he plays or not. It seems up in the air. But honestly, even if he does play, like he's what? So that was July. He's 5-6 months removed from a torn ACL. I think even if he does play, he's might be better than Hainsey, but I think that's still a spot that Dan Quinn is going to test the hell out of. Like, all right, look, you're fresh off. And when I say fresh, I mean fresh with a capital F. Like, he just tore his ACL. I don't know how he's already, maybe having a chance at being back, but they're going to have to they're gonna test him if he plays, and that's gonna be that's the weakness of this Tampa Bay offensive line. As banged up as they've been, they still have Tristan Wirfs at right tackle, who's awesome, and Donovan Smith, who's missed some games, have been banged up this year. I believe he's still there at left tackle. So Tampa Bay is really banged up on the interior. Dan Quinn's gonna have to attack that interior offensive line. to have a chance. And that's really where you see Brady get affected the most, is when he gets pressure up the middle in his face. That's where he struggles the most. So I'm really excited to see what kind of game plan Dan Quinn has ready for this.
Yeah, just an update on Ryan Jensen. Reading a quote from head coach Todd Bowles from earlier this afternoon. Looks like they're a quote. I'll just read the quote. It says, "quote We'll see how he is at the end of the week. He's coming along. He's practicing hard. So we'll see where he is. He's got some tests to pass." End quote. And it looks like he's also been practicing for the last 2 weeks in hopes that he might be able to return to the active roster in time for the
Mhm.
first playoff game. So that's just a quick update on that. So that is definitely something to monitor heading
Mhm.
into the game. The final injury report for Monday's game should be released at some point on Saturday. But that would definitely be a huge reinforcement. And I'm sure it would make Tom Brady feel a little more comfortable back there, assuming he can come back and, play, somewhat decent. Because like you said, he hasn't played football in a long time. And, Dan Quinn should be trying to attack that position because, it's not just Tom Brady, but any quarterback getting pressured up the middle is going to cause some issues because you can't step into throws, and it just creates a whole bunch of issues on that level. So that's definitely going to be something to monitor come game time.
Yeah, and then one more thing I do want to talk about on defensively for the Cowboys is that we mentioned earlier that second corner spot, and thank God for Deron Bland. I don't know where they would be without him. He's certainly helped a lot since Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis have gotten injured, but it's still just been a disaster for Dallas at that other cornerback spot. Um, and so that's going to be an area I guarantee Tom Brady is absolutely going to go after and attack. And he's going to use Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And then, they also have Julio Jones, who's played decent for them at times this year. He's not what he was, obviously, but he hurt Dallas some in week one. And so I'm interested to see how, what Dallas does at that corner spot, be it Trayvon Mullen, who's struggled a lot against Washington, or Mackenzie Alexander, who's played a little bit, or Nashawn Wright, or I don't anticipate Kelvin Joseph getting any sort of run.
At all.
But maybe I'm forgetting one. Oh, Xavier Rhodes, who I mentioned earlier. So it'll be interesting to see how they run, one of those guys out there if they do. Who Dan Quinn chooses. I'm sure it might be a rotation of some sort.
Mhm.
But it seems like that's going to be a spot that Tom Brady's going to go after, and maybe Dan Quinn can mitigate that by putting an extra DB on the field, being another safety out there to help out, or just any they're going to need a strong day out of Malik Hooker. They're really going to need Trevon Diggs to hold things down on the opposite side, so Malik Hooker can help things out on that side of the field. I do think, Nate, this might be a spot for Nashawn Wright where he struggles more with the smaller, shiftier guys. I think he can hold up all right against Julio Jones, just in terms of just in terms of like speed and size, and those are the kind of matchups he does a little bit better with. Again, he struggles with those smaller guys, so we'll see how it works out. But that opposite corner spot's definitely a concern and something that Tom Brady's going to take a big hard look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the main things kind of coming into this game that I've been thinking about all week is that I think they'll be able to kind of contain Mike Evans. Just I think Trevon Diggs will do a lot of shadowing on him. But my main concern has been, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, Scotty Miller in certain situations, maybe stretching the field. Russell Gage, I want to say he got hurt Sunday. I could be wrong on that. But if
Yeah, he
he's
did. I
active,
remember seeing that.
yeah, he's a capable receiver if he's able to play. So that's where my main concern is just these other receivers. And while we've talked at length about this Tampa Bay offense and the struggles they've had, they have some guys that kind of match up really well with this defense and the condition that they're in with some of the injuries that the Cowboys have had in the secondary. So that is definitely going to be something else that Dan Quinn and some of these players are going to have to kind of overcompensate for to make sure that they can't just sling the ball all over the field, because Tom Brady is one quarterback in this league where he's not scared to throw the ball 50 plus times if that's the best way to win a football game. And that's what he will do if he sees a weakness.
It's what they've done all year. I think he leads the league in passing attempts. So it's kind of how
Absolutely.
they've lived and died all year. Yeah, that's I guess that's generally Dallas defense against Tampa's offense, it's just going to come down to the pass rush. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Sam Williams, Oso Digizua. I think I named all the main ones. Maybe I forgot one, but those guys are going to need to step up in a big way and make life hard on Brady, or Dallas is going to go home Monday night, and that's who I'm looking at. So that's the Dallas defense. Let's real quick. Let's talk about the Dallas offense going up against this Tampa defense. Then we'll get into predictions. I know we are going a little long, but there's a lot to discuss in playoff week with all the stuff Dallas has going on. There's just so much riding on this game for the Cowboys on several fronts. So offensively, this Tampa defense, is up and down as Tampa has been. It's been because their offense, their defense is still very solid. Got a phone call there. I don't know if that came through on the stream, but defensively, Tampa Bay is still just pretty rock solid. They're not as good as they were during their Super Bowl run, but they're still going to present some challenges for Dallas, and I really think their issues are going to come in the run game.
Yeah, I just think back when I think about this Bucs defense versus the Cowboys offense. I just think back to a quote that they had after that first game, where I believe it was it Devin White, or was it
I think I remember this.
The other linebacker? But basically, they said that we knew what plays they were going to run, so it was really easy to kind of stop and prepare for. And that is it just goes back to the concern about Kellen Moore and the game plan that he's going to come up with, because if you know what's coming in week one, after 17 weeks of tape and tendencies being established, I don't know how, or I'm concerned about how he's going to kind of approach this, and what can he bring as far as the surprise element to kind of catch the defense off guard and to keep them from knowing what type of plays. Because another disadvantage that they have in this game is that they will be on the road, so the communication will be better for the Bucs defense. And if you come out there and roll out a similar game plan you did to week one, it is going to be tough sledding against this talented group.
Yeah, their biggest issue is going to be how they mix up their play calling, and we absolutely cannot have their same issues of inefficient early down running and getting into third and longs. That's been their issue all year, and when Dak isn't at his best, that kills the offense. So it's this game's kind of going to fall on both lines for Dallas. We mentioned the pass rush earlier. But on the offensive line for Dallas, they're going to have to get some sort of push up front, because as stubborn as Dallas is about running the ball, they're probably going to run the ball too much. And so that it better be somewhat efficient. I'm not counting on it, but, Tampa Bay has Vita Vea in the middle of the defense. They have Akeem Hicks in the middle of the defense. And again, Hicks isn't what he was, but it's still Akeem Hicks and Vita Vea in the middle of the defense. And
one quick note on that, they are, I believe, 6-2 or 6-1 when both Vea and
Hicks
lost the name. Hicks, yeah, when Vita Vea and Hicks play. So that is just something to consider that I heard this week as well. So
those are two monsters in the middle that are gonna make it really hard to run the ball. One interesting thing and a very big difference between this matchup and the week one matchup is Shaq Barrett is not going to be playing in this game. He got hurt, and I believe he's done for the season. He gave Dallas a lot of hell on week one, and honestly, I'm pretty sure he's the one that laid the hit on Dak that broke Dak's thumb. I'm pretty sure that was him, where he gave Tyler Smith all sorts of trouble in Tyler's first start. So their edges, it's Joe Tryon Shoyinka, I believe is how you say that second part of his name, but their 2021 first round pick, who's developed into a really nice player. And then William Golston on the other end. They kind of have a rotation of guys that they bring in. So they don't really have that premier edge rusher anymore. Now that JPP is elsewhere, and Shaq Barrett is injured. I might be forgetting one of their other old pass rushers from their Super Bowl team, but they still have Levante David and Devin White on that second level. Devin White's a guy that you can take advantage of. In Levante David's a guy you can take advantage of, with motion and in coverage. That's just kind of been like he's just a fast run and hit linebacker that has some tendencies that can be taken advantage of. And then in the secondary, Antoine Winfield, who's an outstanding safety, who still to this day I'm sick is not a Cowboy. I wanted him in Dallas so bad in that draft. And then Carlton Davis at one of the cornerbacks. So let's see. Yeah, Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean at the two outside spots. So their secondary is more or less healthy. It's a secondary we've been accustomed to see for them. And they do have an old friend in that secondary, Keanu Neal, who was with Dallas last year, is now with Tampa Bay. And then Logan Ryan, who I believe is the guy that rolled up on Dak's ankle and broke his ankle in 2020. I think that was him. So there's a little bit of history with this Tampa defense for sure. They're largely healthy in the secondary. It's going to be a little bit of a tough matchup for the Dallas receivers. And so we've spent time harping on how hard it's going to be to run the ball, but let's talk real quick about the Dallas passing game and how Dallas's receivers match up with these guys on the outside.
Yeah, I'm actually interested to see CeeDee Lamb on this big of a stage with kind of how he finished the season outside of the Week 18 game where nobody did anything in that game. So I'm throwing that one out. But, there's been questions about CeeDee Lamb, previously in these, kind of primetime slots like Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football in the playoffs last year, how he kind of, might struggle early or not get the ball early and then kind of, weighs on him for the rest of the game and he's not as effective. This is another opportunity for the current 88 to go out there on a big stage, Monday Night Football in Tampa Bay, to really come out and play well. I want to see less Noah Brown out there on the field in the passing game, and I think T.Y. Hilton deserves more opportunities because of I think he's brought a certain energy to this team over the past few weeks since he started coming in and making plays. So that's just kind of what I'm looking for. See how they integrate the three tight ends. I think they could all play, different roles in this football game to move the ball. But yeah, I mean, those are just some things that stand out to me in the passing game. But number one by far is CeeDee Lamb. And, I'm actually excited to see how he, responds to this game.
Yeah, so last year was a disaster for CeeDee Lamb in the playoffs. Not in terms of he didn't play all that well, but just in terms of they did a terrible job of getting him the ball and getting him going. I believe he finished that game with 2 touches, which just can't happen for your best receiver. And
Tony Pollard had like 6, which is
I think Tony Pollard touched the ball. Yeah, I think he had like 4 rushes and 2 check down receptions. So I think that's going to be one big difference this year that we know Dallas is going to change is – look, CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard are by far your best 2 playmakers. They need touches, and they need a lot of them, especially CeeDee Lamb. This year was awesome to see CeeDee take that big step and become an elite wide receiver. His final stats are awesome. He finished with 107 catches for 1,359 yards and 9 touchdowns. And especially over the last – I don't have the numbers in front of me, but over the final month or 2 of the season, he was incredibly efficient with his targets. So – they're going to need a massive day out of CeeDee, and Dak has to look for him early. I guess T.Y. Hilton and Noah Brown and Michael Gallup are going to have to contribute. They are. I mean, bar none. And Noah Brown and Michael Gallup have struggled tremendously with separation. I believe they have some of the lowest separation percent, or there's a stat that tracks yards of separation, and I believe they're both in like the bottom 10 out of like 117 receivers across the league. So maybe T.Y. Hilton's gonna be able to step up, or maybe Gallup or Brown step up. Someone has to. I do think maybe they lean on those tight ends some more. In week 1 against Tampa Bay, when nothing else was really working through the air, Dak leaned on Dalton Schultz a lot in week 1. So maybe they go to Ferguson and Dalton Schultz a lot to help, take the pressure off of Dallas on early downs. Those like a 4. I saw someone say on Twitter, a 4-yard curl to Dalton Schultz is better than 1 or 2 yards up the middle to Zeke on the early down. So I guess just the biggest thing for me is, and I saw this brought up on Twitter today too, and I couldn't agree more. CeeDee Lamb has been tremendous out of the slot. He is an absolute weapon when you put him in the slot and get him in good matchups. Dallas is doing itself a tremendous disservice if they don't work CeeDee Lamb out of that slot. And yeah, I think that's where T.Y. Hilton comes in and helps things out, where he gives you another viable option on the outside that gives you a little more flexibility to move CD into that slot position. So I think you and I are on the same page there, and just in terms of get CD the ball early, get him the ball
Mhm.
often, and let him work out of the slot. He's your best receiver and he's your best playmaker. He needs to show up in a big way on Monday.
And just to follow up on your point about Noah Brown and Michael Gallup's lack of separation, per Next Gen Stats, Noah Brown finished the season with 2.3 yards of average separation, which ranks 100 or tied for 117th out of 121st eligible
Oh,
receivers slash tight ends. Michael Gallup is at 2.4, which ranks tied for 116th out of 121. And then they also rank 103rd out of 112 in catch percentage. So yeah, there's been problems at receiver.
yeah, and there's to that, like, there's good receivers that don't get separation, but they're able to make contested catches.
Which they do neither.
Yeah, they have the double issue. They're not getting separation, and targets to them are remarkably inefficient. So they're going to need someone else besides CD to step up, and they're going to have to lean on Pollard and CD. And I know, as much as Jerry wants Zeke to get the ball and Zeke to be featured, I just fear that with Tampa Bay's defensive line and how tough they are in the middle of that defense, I think this just can't be a Zeke game. They it'll like any Zeke touches, especially in the run game, are probably going to be inefficient and bog things down, and that just can't happen on Monday. So, um, yeah, they're going to have to feed CD. I'm interested to see who Tampa Bay puts on CD if they work him out of the slot. I'm looking at their Our Lads depth chart and just generally who they line up out of the slot. It could be, they play Antoine Winfield as a nickel back. Maybe it just kind of depends on how things play out. Maybe Sean Murphy Bunting gets some run at him. I don't know how Tampa Bay is going to go about guarding CeeDee Lamb, but I think that's the biggest thing that needs to change this year from last year is just CeeDee Lamb needs a lot of touches, and so does Tony Pollard. Those are your best playmakers. Get them the ball. That's your best chance at moving the ball up and down the field. So, do you have anything else on the offensive matchup for Dallas?
No, that was it.
Let's get into some predictions then. I guess I'll let you go first on the predictions.
Yeah, so as far as prediction goes for this game, I have been kind of on the same, I guess, level all week. Where I think an underrated part of this matchup that's I don't think is nearly being talked about enough is that the Cowboys are actually favored in this game. And going against a guy like Tom Brady who uses any little thing for motivation, I think that is the
Yeah.
worst thing that ever happened to this game. So I do think the Cowboys are going to be one and done again. I do think Tampa Bay will come out and win this football game. I think it will be a close game, as most Cowboys games are, but I do have the Bucs winning. I'm gonna say 23-16. So it's going to be somewhat low scoring. I do think the offense won't quite get on track against this Bucs defense. I think that kind of remains consistent with just my lack of confidence in the type of game plan in a big game that Kellen Moore comes up with. I'm not convinced that we will see the Tony Pollard touches that we need in this football game. And I think that will cause the offense to struggle. And yes, the Cowboys will lose 23-16.
So I think you and I are going to disagree on this one. I am also kind of like you, a little bit scarred with with this team and their performances in the playoffs. But I mean, this Tampa Bay team has just been bad all year. If you can't beat this team, you have some serious conversation. I don't care that it's Tom Brady on the other sideline. I've watched a lot of Bucs football this year. They have been largely awful for most of the year, and they should not be a playoff team. So you just have to go out there and you have to take care of business. I think Dallas gets a big day out of the defense just in terms of pass rush and putting heat on Brady. I think they're going to make it hard on Brady. I'm not saying Dallas is going to run away with this, but I do think the Cowboys are going to get it done. I think Dak is going to have a big day. I really think this is going to be a good game for Dak where he gets the ball to his playmakers. And I remember in Troy Aikman's interview after the playoff loss to San Francisco, he said he could not believe he was disgusted at how little of an attempt they made to get CD the ball. And he said, back in the day with Irvin, like I made sure he got the ball. You get him touches, you get him going. So I think Dak and CD are going to have a big day for the offense. I think Dallas gets it done. It's not going to be easy. I think it's going to be relatively close. Score-wise, I'm going to go 26-21 Dallas. I kind of like that Dallas is coming off a week in which they kind of got hit in the mouth. Dallas has responded really well to losses this year. And just I kind of like that people are counting them out a little bit. I saw that I think it's from NFL Network or the NFL writers, that panel. And I'm sure you see those charts every week where it's all the names with the logo and the score prediction. I think 7 of the 10 picked Tampa Bay. This just feels like a spot where everyone is kind of like now the Cowboys, like everyone's like, oh, the Cowboys are overrated. They fall apart in the playoffs. So I feel like they're getting underrated now, and everyone's kind of like, oh, Tom Brady, and they're forgetting that this Tampa Bay team hasn't been very good all year. I think it'll be tough, and it's going to require big days from Dak and Micah, like I said at the beginning. But yeah, I think it's 26-21 Dallas, and I think we might be talking, and depending on how the other games shake out, but I think we might be talking about a round 3 with the Eagles next week, depending on if any other lower seeds win. So, 26-21 Dallas, and I don't think this thing is over quite yet, Corey. I think you and I still have a few more podcasts to record.
All right. Well, I can't wait to see it play out. Like I said, I do think it's going to be close, but I'm one of those guys where you have to prove it to me before I jump on jump back on the bandwagon, because this last 4 to 5 weeks has kind of really took the wind out of my sails, I guess you could say.
See, my thing is like, it's like I'm not even like going out on a limb and saying like this team is a contender, they're going to go on a run. I'm just like, look,
they can win a playoff game.
This is not a good Tampa Bay team. Like, go take care of business. Like, that San Francisco team, you shouldn't have lost to them last year, but at least like they were hot and have proven
they play a style of football.
Yeah, this Tampa Bay team has just been horribly flawed all year, and I think there's some stuff that Dallas takes advantage of, and that's going to require a good coaching job and a strong game plan. So, Corey, I guess you and I will talk again after this game, hopefully on good terms. Unless you got anything else, let's get on out of here. You can make sure to follow me on Twitter at Nate_Sanch77. You can get Corey on Twitter at the Mr. Douglas with 2 S's. Make sure to follow both of our Cowboys accounts at Cowboys News 365 and at Dallas_Fanatic for all things going on at DSF. Thank you guys for listening to the Silver and Blue podcast. Enjoy Super Wild Card Weekend, and we'll talk to you guys next time.